Welcome everybody to TechCraft, this is Rob, and in today's video we'll be going back to basics with part 1 of my step-by-step beginner's guide to iOS shortcuts. Let's go. Today's video is part 1 of a 6-part series aimed at viewers who want to learn how to build great iOS shortcuts. No prior experience with shortcuts is needed, and absolutely no prior experience of computer programming is required at all. In this first part, we'll take a look at the Shortcuts app in detail and we'll build our very first shortcut. In parts 2 and 3, we're going to take a look at 2 of the most critical concepts in the Shortcuts app, variables and data types. If you can master those 2 concepts, you're really equipped to build some great shortcuts. Part 4, we'll learn how to use scripting features like loops and if statements so that you can make your shortcuts react to user input, and we'll see how best to get that input from your users. In part 5, we'll learn how to share your shortcuts with the wider community and also how to find great third-party shortcuts. There's a huge community of shortcuts developers, and this can be a great way of finding shortcuts to solve your task, but also finding shortcuts to help you improve your own skills. And then in the final part, part 6, I'll show you my own personal tips that I've gained from over 20 years of experience as a professional software developer. These tips will help you make shortcuts that are fast, that are easy to understand, and easy to maintain. If this sounds like your kind of series, don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to hit that bell so you don't miss out on future installments of the series. Without any further ado, let's dive in. So let's start at the very beginning by answering the 2 important questions. What is iOS Shortcuts and why should I use it? Shortcuts is a free app available from Apple that allows you to automate repetitive tasks on your iPhone, iPad, or Apple Home device. Now, Shortcuts isn't installed by default on your device, so you will need to download it from the App Store, but it is a totally free download. Anytime you find yourself doing a repetitive task, that task is a candidate for being turned into a shortcut. Apps that you install on your device can supply little snippets of functionality called actions, and then you link these actions together in the Shortcuts app to accomplish the particular task you need. Before we dive into building our first shortcut, let's just take a quick tour of the Shortcuts user interface to make sure we fully understand where everything is and what everything does. So the main screen of Shortcuts has these 3 tab buttons along the bottom here: My Shortcuts, Automation, and the Gallery. So the My Shortcuts tab shows all the shortcuts that you have created or installed onto your device. Don't worry if yours doesn't look like this. Obviously, I've already built a fair few shortcuts. The Edit button up here allows us to click and delete any of these shortcuts, and the little plus icon up here is how we create new ones. The Automation tab allows us to create shortcuts that trigger at particular times of the day, based on our location, based on the presence of Bluetooth devices, a whole bunch of interesting things. Now, this particular functionality isn't particularly well defined yet, so I will not be covering it in this series at all. If you are interested in seeing this content in the future, just throw a comment down below. And the Gallery tab is like a mini app store for shortcuts. These are all shortcuts that Apple has kind of pre-verified and you can download to use on your device. So maybe I want to install this Create Meeting Note shortcut, and I can click on the plus icon here. I can scroll down, I can see what actions it does, and as you get more familiar with shortcuts, you'll be able to understand all of this. And then finally, I can click Add Shortcut and add this one to my device. So if I go back to my main screen here, you'll see that the Create Meeting shortcut is now there. So let's now create our very first shortcut. It's a tradition in computer programming that the first shortcut you create is one that displays Hello World on the screen. So we're going to create a shortcut that will display Hello World in a notification. Let's see how that works. So back in the Shortcuts app, I'm going to click the plus icon up here, and we're presented with the user interface for creating a shortcut. The name of the shortcut is here. This is called New Shortcut right now, but we'll change that shortly. Down the side here, you can find some suggested actions that you might want. I find these to be mostly useless, to be honest. In the apps section here, I can see all the apps that are installed, and each of these apps has contributed some kind of action that can be used in a shortcut. So for example, I have Bear installed. If I click on Bear, you can see that it has a bunch of shortcut actions, one of which is Create Bear Note. The other 7 sections here contain all the built-in actions from the Shortcuts app, and we're going to use a few of these in a second. Browsing around in these sections can get quite tedious once you get familiar with shortcuts. So there's a search box up here, and if I wanted to bring up that Create Bear Note action, I can do so by searching for it. I do recommend that you spend a little bit of time browsing around both the built-in action set and the actions that come with your apps. Really understanding what actions are available is key to being able to build great shortcuts. So we're going to start by adding a simple action which will show a notification, and there is actually a show notification action, which I've done in the search bar here, but I could just as easily have gone into scripting here, scroll down until we get to the notification, section, which is all the way at the bottom, and then see the show notification action is here. You can see now why I prefer to use the search. I'm going to just click on that, and it brings in the action into my shortcut list here, and it's pre-filled the text that will be shown, this little slot here with the text Hello World. So now we can just run this. We can run this in two ways from within the Shortcuts app. We can either press the play button down here, or if you have a keyboard attached to your device, you can press Command and R. And then notice up here is our little notification saying Hello World. So that's our very first shortcut. So I want to refine this shortcut a little bit now by prompting the user for the text to show in that notification. Let's see how we do that. So there is a built-in ask for input action in the Shortcuts app, and you can actually see that is already here in the same notification section that we pulled the notification action in from. And rather than click to add, I'm actually just going to drag this in and make sure it comes in here. The actions in this shortcut will execute in order top to bottom. So it's very important that we have the ask action before the show action, because we need to ask for the input before we actually display the notification. This little gray box here with a kind of faded out question in there shows that we have a slot for this action that needs some input in it. So I'm going to say that my question is, what shall I say? And I'm going to run this now and see what happens. So now we've got our prompt box, and I'm going to type in a message, hello there this time. Click OK. And the shortcut ran, but we still get hello world in the notification. Now, this is probably obvious why we still have this filled in here. We need to get the output of this ask for input action into that slot on the show notification action there. We can do that really easily. I'm going to long press on this. I'm going to select magic variable. Now what's happening here is there's a magic little variable here, and we'll talk a lot more about variables in part 2. But for now, this is just a little name for the output of this action. I'm going to click on that, and you'll notice that there's a line here now that stitches these two actions together just to signify that the output from this is becoming the input to this. So now if we run this shortcut, I'm going to say, don't forget to subscribe. We now get that message in our notification. Obviously, it's not very convenient to have to run this shortcut from within the Shortcuts app itself. Thankfully, there are 3 options for saving the shortcut and running it from somewhere else. We can save it to the home screen and run it from the home screen. We can save it to the widget, and we can save it to the share sheet. If you don't know what the widget is, it is this cool thing on the home screen here. You've got a load of different widget controls in here, but there is a shortcuts one, and all your shortcuts that you want to show in the widget will show here for easy access. The share sheet is the little icon up here that appears in apps like Safari, and when you click on it, you get this cool widget, and you can scroll down, and at the bottom here, you'll see all the shortcuts that you've chosen to appear in the share sheet. We'll see a lot more about the share sheet in part 2. For now, though, let's return to shortcuts and save this shortcut to our widget and to our home screen. So I'm back in the Shortcuts app with our shortcut, and what I'm going to do is hit the next button up here, and I'm going to give this a name, and notify. Click done. And there's the notify action down there. I'm actually going to drag it up to the top. Can't do that with my mouse, but I'm doing it with my finger. Leave it there. So this just means it will appear right at the beginning of my widget. So if I go to my home screen now, you can see there is my notify shortcut. I can click on it to run it, and we can just say hello. Okay, brilliant. Now, what I want to do is add this to the home screen. How do we do that? Well, what I'm going to do is come back into the Shortcuts app, click on these 3 dots to bring up the edit screen for that shortcut again, and click on these 3 dots to bring up the shortcut properties. Now, notice that showing widget is selected by default, showing share sheet is not selected, and we'll look at that in part 2. And what I'm going to do is click add to home screen. And it's going to go on the home screen looking like this, but before I do that, what I actually want to do is change that icon. So I'm going to click on the icon here. I'm going to choose this nice blue, and in this glyph tab, I can choose an icon, because glyph is obviously the obvious word there. And I'm going to choose this person, click done. And now when I go to add to home screen, I have this cool icon. It's going to be called notify, and let's click add. So if I go back to my home screen now, you can see that there is the shortcut on the home screen with available to run. I'm going to click on that, and it just brings me back into Shortcuts, ready to run. So there we go. In this video, we've learned our way around the Shortcuts app. We've built our very first shortcut. We've seen how to make that shortcut available from the widget and from the home screen. Next week, we're going to dive deeper into the topic of variables. So we'll see how to create shortcuts that appear in the share sheet, that accept input, and also how to just build more complex workflows that handle a lot more data. Hope that you found this video useful. If so, please do hit like, do hit subscribe, and don't just hit subscribe, but hit the bell as well so you don't miss out on any future parts of this series. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.